This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman and Riley Smith. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Well, good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Thursday, June 16th, 2022. We're so glad you can join us today. In this episode of AM PM, we finish up our coverage from the open house for the ISU dairy farm that was last Friday. We also have a check of the ag weather outlook, but first, let's run down those markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
Well, we're towards the end of the trading day in the ag marketplace, so we go to Brian Splitt of agmarket.net for a little bit of a rundown on how the session went today. So, Brian, what happened in those grain markets?
Hey, Riley. We actually had a very strong day in the grains. Today was led by the wheat market. And the early strength was corn. Corn was able to push through the highs that we had moving into Memorial Day weekend. So you might recall coming out of that long 3-day weekend, we had new crop corn futures drop about 50 cents from the pre-weekend high to the post-weekend low. Old crop dropped about 60 cents. So technically we were able to get through that peak. We closed above that high, and I think that's pretty constructive on new crop corn. Looking at the soybean market, yesterday we made a new low for the move on old crop, and part of that was driven by news of a cancellation of 100,000 tons of old crop soybeans. But we were able to recover today, and new crop was able to close back above some short-term resistance, back above the 10-day moving average. And Chicago wheat was really the bright spot today, finishing about 30 higher, and we really stayed near the highs and continued to push highs throughout the session. So good day all around in the grains today.
Right, and have we seen, after the most recent USDA reports that the grain markets are largely just kind of trading on just basic fundamentals right now?
Yeah, we have this kind of day-to-day, sometimes the outside markets provide some influence. Definitely we're seeing some headline-driven moves, especially in the wheat when we talk about things happening in the Black Sea region. Humanitarian corridor, on again, off again type talk there. But by and large right now, I think the market is anticipating a weather market. We're getting really into gear in that respect. Some of the longer term models, again, seem to be pointing towards that warmer and drier bias for summer. And we know the balance sheet's at a point where we really can't afford to lose yield. But then at the same time, we have these recessionary fears. We look at the outside markets, you look at the equity indices today really getting hammered. And so, sometimes the money flow of one market may affect another market. And that was something that we saw in 2008, where when the house of cards really came tumbling down, it affected everything, even things that looked like they had bullish fundamentals.
And, this morning, the U.S. export sales report came out as well, and it was, as I've said in other reports today, it was pretty ho-hum today. So is that having much of an impact on the markets right now?
I don't think that's the main driver right now. Of course, we're going to pay attention to the export sales. We're getting close to wrapping up the marketing year, which would end, as of September 1st as the new crop marketing year. And I think right now, old crop is something you're going to have to pay attention to as far as export sales, just to see some minor revisions potentially on the old crop balance sheet. But the biggest driver on the balance sheet right now would be the trade's perception of what the weather is doing to yield. We might see a little bit of an increase or a decrease here and there on the acres. We'll get an update to the acreage scenario at the end of the month, the last trading day of the month on June 30th. But by and large, the movement in yield, or the perception of movement in yield, is going to be the biggest driver of balance sheet changes at this stage in the game.
All right, and what are we seeing on the other side of the marketplace in the livestock complex?
Well, so, kind of a tough day here in the feeders. Not as bad as it could have been, but Again, it's not a 100% rate where you see corn and feeder cattle move at an inverse of each other, but today was a day where you did see that with corn futures up, let's call it 15 cents a lot of the day. We did have the feeders down about $2, $1.50 to $2. And, we just seem to be kind of figuring out what we're doing here on the feeders. We've gotten back to some of these long-term downtrends. We haven't really been able to break through them meaningfully. And I think this feeder cattle market is trying to play weather as well. If this corn market comes shooting out of this long weekend higher, and so mind you, what we're going to be looking at coming out of this long weekend, which we've never observed before, we have not had a long weekend at this time of year before. So we've got a new federal holiday that the exchange will be observing, and there's no trade on Monday. So when we look at weather forecasts going out 2 weeks from that, it's basically going to be looking at the weather coming out of 4th of July weekend. So I think you're going to have a lot of volatility in the grains coming out of this weekend. And that to me would suggest you're going to have quite a bit of volatility in the feeder cattle, most likely moving inverse of what corn decides to do based on the weather forecast. Now, on the live cattle side of things, with the feeder cattle down and with the stock market down, we saw a little bit of pressure there. But again, I thought live cattle held in quite a lot better than what the outside markets would have suggested. If you told me that we were going to have the Dow down 800 and feeders were down several dollars, I thought we'd see a little bit more weakness in the live cattle, but we didn't. And so there's kind of this ongoing narrative of will the numbers be there, and then the recessionary fears, and will the demand be there? And this is kind of the on again, off again narrative in live cattle. As far as hogs, saw some buying in the front, a little bit of selling in the backs, a little bit of bull spreading. And similar to the cattle, hogs have made their way back up to the downtrend lines, haven't been able to get through them. And we'll see how that plays out in the next several weeks.
All right. Well, lots of great information today, Brian. For those of our listeners and our watchers who would like to learn more and get in touch with the folks at agmarket.net, how can they do that?
You can reach us directly at our office line, 844-424-6758. You can reach me directly at 815-665-0463. Check us out online at www.agmarket.net and get a free trial of our app at agmarket.app.
Well, Brian, it was great talking with you today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Likewise, Riley. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That again was Brian Splitt of agmarket.net. We'll go ahead and take a look at those closing market numbers. That's courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart.
July corn is up 14 1/4 at 788 1/4. December corn up 14 even at 735 even. July soybeans up 15 3/4 at 1709 1/2. November soybeans up 19 3/4 at 1543 1/4. Soybean meal up 11.30 at 415.80. Soybean oil down 116 at 74.68. Chicago wheat up 28 1/4 at 1078 1/4. Minneapolis spring wheat up 7 3/4 at 1209 even. Kansas City hard red wheat up 15 1/4 at 1148 1/2. And July oats down 3 even at 658 1/4. On the Merc, June live cattle up 20 cents at 137.75. Feeder cattle down 197 at 171.30. Lean hogs up $1.30 at 109.57. Pork cutout up 72 cents at 113.70. And Class 3 milk down a nickel at 24.29.
And that's been a check of the Ag Market Recap here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, we have more coverage on Iowa's dairy industry for June National Dairy Month. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Well, last Friday, Averie and I had the chance to head out to the ISU dairy farm for their open house, where they welcomed in all visitors to learn all about the dairy industry in Iowa. Among the people there who I got the chance to talk to was Cynthia Hamlet. She's part of the Iowa Farmer Relations staff with Midwest Dairy. We talked about just some general stats about Iowa's dairy industry and how it impacts the economy.
Well, we're out here at the Iowa State University Dairy Research and Teaching Unit here for a Dairy Month kind of open house day today. So first off, let's just talk a little bit about the event and just what's going on today.
Sure. So my name is Cynthia Hamlet. I'm with Midwest Dairy and the Iowa State Dairy Association, and I'm farmer relations with Midwest Dairy. So I get to help promote dairy all across the state of Iowa, and this is one of the events that we get to attend. So the Iowa State University Dairy Farm is kicking off their open house again this year, and we're excited to have consumers from all across Iowa and locally here join us here at the dairy to learn more about where their milk comes from.
Right, exactly, and that's a big thing that we always push for more people to learn about is where their food comes from, where their products come from, and this is a great opportunity to see all that. And let's right now just talk a little bit about Iowa's dairy industry because we think Iowa, we think corn, soybeans, pork, beef, but we have a pretty nice dairy industry as well. So let's just talk about where Iowa kind of ranks nationally with dairy and just how much milk they produce.
Yeah, so Iowa ranks 12th out of all 50 states in milk production, and we have right around $25,000 of economic impact per cow here in the state. So lots of production of milk here in the state of Iowa, and even though we don't have as illustrious as of dairy promotion and processing here in the state of Iowa, we still bring in a lot of money to the state to help bring dairy's industry to life here in the state of Iowa for all those dairy products that people love.
Right, and there's such a big variety to the dairy industry as well. We don't have just milk, there's butter, cheese, all that sort of stuff. So how varied is Iowa's dairy industry?
To the wide array, as wide as you can think of, with lots of variety, from milk, cheese, yogurt, butter, and then all the different flavors that you can find across the state of Iowa.
So let's talk as well, just the spread of the dairy industry through the state, just how many farms we have in Iowa and that family farm aspect.
Yeah, so we have right around 850 dairy farms in Iowa with just over 200,000 cows. So 10 years ago we had the same amount of cows but over 1,000 dairy farms. But dairy farms are condensing a little bit now, so dairy farms have a few more cows on their farms, with the average size being right around 250 here in the state of Iowa. So going from there, the farms are getting smaller, but the cows are still producing just as much milk, if not more, than they were just 10 years ago or so. So much more efficiency on the farm. A lot of technology has been increased, and with the sustainability of everything that happens on the farm, dairy farmers are trying to give back as much as they can to the environment that they work with so that they can pass it on to the next generation.
Right, and that's one of the most impressive things. You walk in this building right away, and you see that milking facility, and it's such a huge advancement from what we've seen. Like you said, even over 10 years. So, what are some of the improvements that we've seen just recently in the dairy industry on these farms?
Sure. So you can't see it here today, but on a lot of dairy farms across the nation, and specifically here in Iowa, they now milk with robots. So they have a robot come in on the farm, and that's how the cows get milked. They can visit the robot whenever they choose throughout the day, and instead of having that labor there with the human there to milk the cow, they have the robot there, and the farmer can spend more time looking at the cows and observing them and how they're interacting with each other during the day, so that they can kind of better watch their health and manage the farm that way. And a few other robotic aspects or technology advancements, they have collars around the neck of the cows, and that's how they monitor their health and make sure that they're active, and if they're not eating as much, they can treat them and kind of take care of them as best as they can. So having that sustainability aspect but efficiency as well is kind of come full circle in the dairy industry nowadays.
All right, and is there anything else we'd like to talk about for the dairy industry as far as Iowa goes today?
Yeah, of course. So just want to remind folks that they can always reach out to us at midwestdairy.com to learn more about dairy promotion and learn just to the consumers as well. If you're interested in learning more about our dairy product that is locally consumed and locally produced, as well as having that nutrient-rich 13 essential nutrients, and just coming from a sustainability aspect as well of the farms trying to take care of the environment as much as they can. So that's it.
All right, well, thanks very much for talking with us today.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out.
Averie was also at the event, and she had the chance to talk with Associate Teaching Professor with the Department of Animal Science at Iowa State University and dairy judging coach Kristen Burgett. They talked about how students can get involved with dairy judging on the campus of Iowa State and how the students from her classes use the dairy farm.
With the coaching, how does that come into play? How does the industry help those students and possibly you learn some more about the industry as a whole?
So dairy judging is really unique in the aspect of we go out to farms within the state to practice. And so it's a great way for our students who are involved in the dairy industry to go meet and connect with producers and to see some elite high quality show cows that they can get really excited about. But then at the same time, they have a discussion with the producer and maybe get a tour of their operation. And so it's always nice for them to kind of compare and contrast how their operation maybe differs from that of theirs at home, and maybe they take away some unique ideas. But through dairy judging, we kind of teach students how to physically evaluate the appearance of a dairy cow and what to look for in terms of ideal traits. And so for some of these students, they go on to pursue careers with some of our artificial insemination companies, and they help do matings. And so having that understanding of the ideal dairy cow really comes into play as a daily part of their job. And so they're really putting the skills to use that they learned through dairy judging into their future jobs. And so employers are looking for that. And so it's a really unique event that these students can participate in. And then they also too learn good decision making skills, how to defend a decision. They communicate those ideas and thoughts to a judge, and then we kind of teach them their professionalism skills along the way. So kind of really honing their current skills, making them a little more polished, and then providing them life skills that they can use once they graduate.
Perfect. And now you talked a little bit about teaching dairy science. Was it 235?
Correct.
Awesome. So do you visit the facility out here a lot for that, or do you use that in your teaching? And how do you use that industry in your teaching to help the students understand a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so for the 235 Dairy Cattle Science class, it's basically a broad introduction to the dairy industry for all students. So I have students who come from a dairy background and those who have never been on a dairy farm before. And so we have lecture twice a week, and then we have a lab once a week for 2 hours. And so we come out here to the dairy farm for about 8 of our labs. So that way students can get hands-on experience working with calves all the way to some lactating cows. And so we start very basic. We give them a general tour of the dairy farm and talk about what we do and why and some of our management practices. And then we slowly introduce them to the calves, and they can interact one-on-one. And so it's really fun to see the students get all excited about that. And then we just talk about how to properly move dairy cattle, and then they can be in the parlor milking cows and get some hands-on experience that way, and doing a variety of skills and things that, again, too, they might do at a future internship or job. And so it's really taking what they hear in the classroom and applying it then the next day in lab when they're out here for class. And so for some students, it's a nice confirmation of information they might already know. And for some students who have never been on a dairy farm before, they just absolutely love it, and they go on to pursue a job in the dairy industry. And that's what we need, is more students entering into dairy who might not necessarily be from a dairy farm, but I think that's what we need. Always having a third party view looking in is always great too.
All right, so how can people get involved if they're interested in dairy judging or even possibly taking your class?
So for dairy judging, when students are interested in being on the dairy judging team, I always recommend that they come talk to me. But then typically what students do is they first enroll in one of our animal science classes, 335, which is dairy cattle evaluation. And so for that class, we again teach them the basics about dairy judging, what to look for, and how to compile your set of oral reasons. And so that's a good way for them to get their feet wet. And then we come out here to the dairy farm as well and evaluate live classes of dairy cows where they have to sort 4 animals, and then we kind of talk through why we sorted it the way we did. So if they take the class and they really enjoy that aspect of it, then they can join the team the following fall semester. And then basically for dairy judging, like I said before, we go and practice on dairy farms throughout the state on Saturdays, and then we kind of practice throughout the week, but then they compete in 3 to 4 collegiate contests throughout the United States. So we compete at Viroqua, Wisconsin. We compete at World Dairy Expo in Madison, Wisconsin. We go to Louisville to the North American International Livestock Exposition, and then we go down to Fort Worth, Texas as well, to the Southwest Intercollegiate Dairy Cattle Judging Contest. So that's a neat way for them to, again, to go around and check things out. And then for dairy judging, they simply sign up for a class for that as well, and they can get a couple credits of college credit. And so you don't have to be a dairy science major or anything like that to be on the dairy judging team. I've had egg business to egg education to the animal and dairy science major. So really, regardless of your major, if you're interested in dairy, you can be on the dairy judging team.
Perfect. So lots of involvement here, lots of ways you can get involved in the industry and even at Iowa State. We thank you for talking with us today.
Thank you.
And that wraps up our coverage from Iowa State University's open house at their dairy farm. We'll go ahead and take a look now at that ag weather outlook. Well, when I stepped outside this morning, the temperature felt really nice, a lot nicer than those sub 100-degree days that we've been seeing recently. But then again, anything feels better than 100 degrees. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the National Weather Service has in store for the next 24 hours and see if that cool weather is going to stick around.
As you can see here from the National Weather Service, the temps are cooling off a bit for a little while. Today, mostly sunny and warm conditions across the state. Temps range from the mid-80s to low 90s. Tonight will be mostly clear with thunderstorms likely in the southwest. Lows overnight should range from the upper 50s to upper 60s. Tomorrow, mostly clear and a little cooler. Highs will be in the mid to high 80s. Looking at the affiliate weather map right now, as you can see for tomorrow, Cherokee will be sunny with a high of 89. Shenandoah sunny with a high around 89 as well. Des Moines clear and sunny with a high of 88. Albia partly cloudy and 87. Waterloo sunny and 85. And Clinton should see clear skies with a high of 85.
For more detailed forecasts in your part of the state, make sure you check in with your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. And that's been a check of the Ag Weather Outlook, and it also brings us to the end of this episode of Ag Matters PM. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, and you can find our video content and previous episodes of AM/PM on our YouTube channel, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to see when those videos go live. Don't forget as well our free twice daily market podcast on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Dustin Huffman and Averie Haskell, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.